All right. Okay. Welcome everybody to the KIC and Transdisciplinary School PhD session, where our PhD students who are working in learning technology, usually learning analytics and AI and ed, we meet every week. And so today we're delighted to welcome Saleh Alghamdi from Monash, who is also doing his own PhD. And we're very happy to have you here, Saleh, and you're going to give us an update on what you've been doing in your PhD, and then we'll throw it open for discussion. And if there are particular questions that you want to draw our attention to, then please do, and we'll do our best to see if we have any wisdom to share. So, without further ado, I'll throw it over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Simon. I will thank you for having me today just to deliver this webinar. And also, I wanted to welcome the other people who join us today. I am doing my PhD at Monash, and this is the third year for me. Since I began, I start with the analytics of the temporal patterns of self-regulated learners or learning, I would say. I have conducted some studies and published some of them and some of them under review. Today I'm going to talk about one study, which is the analytics of temporal patterns of self-regulated learning using a time series approach. So my webinar will be divided in these sections. First, I will give some overview of the study, and then I'll talk about the research gaps that we fill, and also about the research questions that we addressed and the methodology that we use and main findings and discussion and so on. So let me start with the theoretical framework and concepts here. As we know, the SRL processes are series of processes, including metacognitive and cognitive. The metacognitive including the orientation, planning, and evaluation, and also monitoring. And for cognitive includes the first reading, rereading, and elaboration. So what usually in prior research, they study the self-regulated learning as statics. They focus on how many times students engage with particular or specific SRL processes. However, in my studies, I try to cover the temporality. So if I talk about the temporality, I mean, I will talk about the sequentiality and the passage of time. The sequentiality, I mean, how students do some transitions between the processes, and the passage of time, the duration, how much time students spend in each SRL processes. So why we should study SRL as a temporal processes? As we know, the SRL processes are dynamic, and students usually they alter their strategies and activities during the learning cycle. So to be able to capture and detect the dynamic of SRL from the temporal perspective, we use the time series. So the time series, it can help us just to cover the both dimension, I mean the sequentiality and the passage of time. So there are many approaches they used with SRL processes, including the first order Markov model and ENA and ONA. So, but usually these models, they have some limitations. Actually, for example, the ENA usually they study the network and how each process connect to the other one, and the ONA usually focus on the process occurrence. So, however, the time series it focus on the sequence or on the time series of these processes. So this is the main gap, I would say, and to cover this gap, we apply a novel model, time series model. It's called dynamic time warping. The dynamic time warping, it's try to find the optimal path between two time series. When I say two time series, I mean two students they like engage with SRL processes in at particular time. So the dynamic time warping, this algorithm tried to find, how these students like behave similarly, and they will assign both of them in one cluster. So the existing gaps is like handling the temporal dimensions from time series perspectives. And also there is shortage of research on detecting SRL strategies based on that temporality. So I wanted to mention something very important here, because some research in the previous, they like detect some useful and meaningful strategies, for example, especially with writing task, because in my study I'm focusing on the writing task. They detect some meaningful strategies, for example, reading first and writing next, or reading and writing in the same time. But they don't tell us at which time students engage with this particular SRL process. So this is still, not known. So we try to capture that by applying the time series like approach. So this is how we handle this gap. Based on the theoretical and the gaps, we like design or formulate two research questions. The first one, what are the learning strategies and what are the temporal sequences of those strategies that students enact as they like engage in a learning task, in writing task, I mean. The second one, to what extent are the learning strategies that learners enact during a task associated with their achievement? What I wanted to say here in simple, or in other words, first thing, I wanted to capture the temporal strategies. For example, maybe some group of students, they are like very active with metacognitive more than other clusters or more than other groups. And also I wanna to see if one cluster that reflect the temporal strategies students like enact, and how this cluster or how this strategy affect their performance, their essay scores, I mean here. So our participants were like 134 undergraduate students from Beijing University. So they conducted a learning or a writing task during like 2 hours, 120 minutes in a lab setting. So they were required to write an essay with 300 to 400 like words using about three topics, which is AI education and scaffolding and differentiation. Actually, we used a system called Flora. The Flora can capture, the trace data for these students, and based on this trace data, we convert this trace data into meaningful actions following the Banner like framework, because there are other models, but we use in our lab the Banner one. For the data analysis, to capture the meaningful like strategies based on the temporality, we use the dynamic time warping, and to see which like strategy that student enact or perform that affect their performance, we have conducted the ANCOVA and ANOVA as well. Because we used here two like tests. ANOVA because we just like see the relationship between each cluster and their performance, and we used ANCOVA just to like include other like factors as a covariate. For example, the English language, because maybe some students who have like high level in English, they will perform more in this like, or will perform better in this like task. Okay, this is like just a figure how the time series works. Actually, it finds the optimal path between two time series. The red line here, as you see on the right side, is just to find the optimal path between like all students and between the variations between them.
Saleh, can I just jump in there?
Yep.
your slides are very pixely and hard to read. I think it's probably internet connection or something. So it's not just me, right? Yeah. I'm just wondering whether the slides you emailed me are the up to date, and can I share them from my screen?
Yep,
And
please, yep, please. Yep.
okay, because I have a copy as long as it's up to date
Yeah,
copy.
the same, yep.
Okay, because otherwise we're not seeing your visuals very well.
Okay, no worries. Yep.
Okay, let me just pop those up so that everyone can see them, and then we can keep going. Okay,
Yep.
so okay, everybody's seeing that?
Yeah, good. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah,
Okay, so
actually,
just tell me next slide, and then I will move it on.
yeah. Actually, almost I have done with this slide. I discussed about the methodology, and I was talking about this figure here just to explain how like the DTW works. Usually, it finds the optimal path between the two time series or more than two time or more than like two series of timing. This is how it works. Yeah, I think maybe we can go to the next slide. Yep. Actually, this is the learning environment or the system we have used just to perform the study. This is the Flora system. As you see, students can see this like interface. From the left side, you can see the reading materials students that used to write their essays. It includes the three topics: artificial intelligence and the scaffolding and the differentiation. Also, it includes the rubric, the how we like score their essays later, and also it includes the general instructions about this study. And when students like press on each of these reading material, it will be showing on the reading area, as you see in the middle at the top. And at the down, when students press on the essay tool, it will be activated automatically down. You can see it down, the essay writing space. Here, where the students can write their essay. And also it will be automatically count their words. For example, if they write like 100 words, it will be counting automatically and will be showing there just to help students to monitor their learning behaviors or learning time as well. And there are some utility tools, for example, taking annotation or just highlight some text to go back later on to them. And there is a little bottom, tool down, which is the timer to help students to manage their time as well. So we can go now, if you want, to the next slide. Yep. Here I'm talking the adopted trace data pressure that we use. Actually, we follow the FAN framework based on Banert framework. As I said, the Banert framework, they have they categorize the SRL into three main categories. The main one is like the metacognitive that include the orientation and evaluation and monitoring and so on, and the cognitive including the elaboration and other processes including the readings. So here, as you see here, there are like sequence of events. This is the raw data. First, when we get the first raw data like this, we try to convert this raw data into meaningful actions. For example, if students open the reading page for one time or two times or three times, and later on he start to write, we can recognize this as a reading activity. When students open the reading material, we can consider it as reading activities. If it happens for the first time, it will be recognized or labeled as first reading. If it happens later on in the second hour of the learning task, it will be recognized as rereading, for example, because some students want to review their essays. Yep, we can go to the next one, Simon, if you want. Yep, thank you, Simon. Actually, based on our analysis, we could capture or detect 5 meaningful strategies based on their temporal behavior. The cluster 1, which reflect their temporal strategies, we call it as incremental metacognitive engagement, because the students start with medium engagement with metacognitive and they gradually increase their metacognitive. We call it as incremental metacognitive. The second one is transitional cognitive engagement. We mean here students start with reading and then shift their effort to write. So we call it as transitional cognitive engagement. They start reading and writing. And honestly, based on this temporal strategies is intersect with other study. They use a different model, not the time series model. And they found some students, they read first and write next. And it will intersect with this cluster as well. For cluster 3, they are inactive during their learning task, and we call this cluster inactive metacognitive and occasional cognitive engagement. They have some cognitive engagement, but it's not really intensive. And the cluster 4 is the high cognitive engagement. They have active and intensive engagement entire the session across all the cycles. And the 5th one is consistent cognitive engagement. They have consistent behavior, either in reading activities, first reading or rereading, or elaboration. I'm not sure if you can, Simon, please press this link just to show the the clusters, how it looks like. Because we label these clusters based on the clustering, based on the plots. Yep. Yep. This is the plots that we have. Actually, as you see here, for example, we have we have 12 time windows here. Each time window 10 minutes, because we have 2 hours. And as you see, students in the first 10 minutes, they have high orientation activity in the first 10 minutes. And this is expected because students, they start their task with reading the instructions and rubric and so on. And we have on the planning, some students, they have high planning compared to others. For example, the cluster 1 and cluster 2, the blue and orange one, they have high planning compared to other students. And also we have down the evaluation and monitoring, and this is how students, they engage with these 2 processes. And for me, for cognitive processes, which is the first reading and rereading, I can maybe explain one of them because it's hard to explain all of them regarding to the time. But let us, for example, focus on cluster 2, the orange one. As you see, the students in the first hour, they were very active in first reading. As you see the plot, the line up, the orange line, you can see students, they were very active in the first hour. However, in the second hour, they shift their effort to elaborate on more on the text. If we go down, please, Simon, you can see the elaboration down, the elaboration one. So you can see the orange one. Now students, they shift their effort to start their writing. Before they were reading a lot in the first hour, and in the second hour, they shift their effort. So we call this cluster transitional cognitive engagement, because they start with one like activity and shift their effort to another activity from reading to writing. This is so far about, the clusterings, how they look like. So we can continue the next slide if you want, Simon. There is one question: are these clusters for a period of time that students is active, or so might change pattern, or for the whole time? Actually, it was for the whole time. Thank you, Ben. Actually, it was for the whole time, for the whole 120 minutes. We capture the sequentiality and also the passage of time. This is the how time series works. We try to like cover the both aspects or both dimensions. Yep. We can go to the next slide, please, Simon. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time. So actually, after we detect these 5 clusters, or we can say after we detect these 5 temporal strategies, we wanted to see if students who assigned to cluster 1 or cluster 2, they will be, or they achieve higher scores compared to other strategies or compared to other clusters. So when we run ANOVA, we found there is no significant like association between the clusters that we detected that reflect the temporal strategies and their performance. So we didn't find like any like significant, but when we apply the ANCOVA and include the English factor, as this like study conducted in Beijing, we found that the English test, this is a national test in China, is called CET6, which is the national for the college students. Students who perform this like or achieve higher score in this exam, they have like higher scores even in the essays, in their essays. So we could say there is some association between the language proficiency and their like performance or essay scores, I would say, to make it very clear. Yep. So yeah, this is the highlight. Yep. Thank you so much, Simon. So we can go to the discussion. Yep. Actually, by applying the time series approach, we provide or we contribute to the field by providing like empirical evidence by, by showing that time series is very, very useful to capture meaningful strategies based on their like behaviors or temporal behaviors, I would say. Also, our findings aligning with barrier studies. As I said, maybe, for example, when students have done transitional behaviors by starting with reading and writing. So there are some studies, they found similar strategies for writing and reading, but using different model, using ENA. Also, applying multiple techniques provide deeper insights. For example, we try to apply multiple, techniques, or applying multiple techniques provide deeper insights. For example, we divide the students, this is very important, we divide the students into high and low performers because we wanted to see like the high performance like belongs to which clusters. And also for applying the techniques, we try later on in other studies, in my other studies, to apply other time series like metrics, because in this study I used the DTW. In other studies I used like the Euclidean distance, and also I use the hierarchical clustering just to capture the differences between them and which one is more efficient for clustering based on the time series. Yep, we can go to the other one. Limitations and future work. Okay. So as we have done this study in Beijing, we would expect if we conduct the same study in different country as a native speakers, we may get a different results. And also other factors may impact the detected SRL strategies. For example, we could investigate like other factors, for example, the motivation. As we know, the SRL processes include metacognitive and cognitive, and also the motivational like aspect. So we could include the motivational or motivation as a factor, just to see if students feel more motivated, they may be more active during their learning task. And the opposite could be true as well. So the implemented time series approach could be further enhanced. This approach, actually, we like divide the time series into 12 time windows. Like each like window is like 10 minutes. We could make it like 5 minutes or 2 minutes to capture more like events in these short terms. It could give us more clustering or more or different result, I would say. Yep. This is the references that I use in my presentation, and thank you so much for your like attendance and listening, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you wanna, or to get any feedback from you. How can I improve my work and studies?
Okay. All right. Thanks very much, Saleh, for sharing that.
Yes.
A
Thank you.
round of silent applause. This is always a
Yeah.
problem. Always a problem with online is you can never even hear your audience applaud you. Uh,
Yeah.
okay. Now I'll stop sharing the slides, but we can bring them up if we have questions about where the slides will help. So let me throw it open. Who wants to get things going? I can see Ben typing. But while we wait for Ben to type, or why don't you just talk to us, Ben?
Yeah, I'll try to talk, see if the signal's okay.
That's good.
I'm curious as to whether, like, in a 2-hour window, I think you're looking at the activity, how much you're how closely you're tied to sort of a theory about learning like SRL compared to performance in a task. I guess like the difference between looking at the activity of people during a task performance, during the progress of going from less knowledge to more knowledge.
Thank you so much. Are you trying to say maybe applying or the SRL process could be different between the short time, like 120 minutes, and longer period, or just you wanted to say something else, just to clarify the questions?
Yeah, like so learning might happen over days or weeks.
Yeah, or across semester.
Yeah, and you're looking at like, these are the kind of behaviors that you're seeing when they're doing a pretty intensive task. So it's the performance of their own knowledge.
Yep.
Or is there a component in there whilst they're doing that task that is sort of, that's where the learning's happening?
Actually, we have conducted like a barrier like test, like a questionnaire to test the students' knowledge before they conduct this task. But it doesn't matter like if students have like any knowledge about this task or no. But we conducted the a questionnaire for the barrier knowledge before they start that 2 hours session, and also we like have like conducted the same questions or questionnaire as a post test, just to check how students like improve their performance before and after, how their knowledge improved before the task and after the task, after they read like the AI in education and differentiation and scaffolding and so on. But yes, there are some variation in their knowledge. But when we statistically we test this one and include the barrier knowledge, even we didn't find any like association, or we didn't find a statistical like significance between their barrier knowledge and their performance as well. So it was like a task just to read and write. It's like a challenge within 2 hours time. They have to conduct this study.
Thanks. Interesting.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Can I just clarify? You showed us the screenshot of the Flora environment. So the task over 2 hours was to read all the material, that was on those different pages.
Yep.
Uh, and at any point they could open the writing tool. Okay. So they're working their way through the content here.
Yep. True.
Right. And at any point they bring out the writing tool and continue writing their essay. Is that right?
Yep. Yep. Right. Actually, they start reading the materials at the top and writing down. Yep.
Right. Okay. So it's not that they're writing notes on each page. There's one essay that they are writing, and they can access that essay at any time.
Yep. Only one essay. Only one tool for the essay just to write, but they can use the highlight. There is one tool on the right side. They can use it as highlighter, just to taking some notes. But those notes will not be, maybe could be included in the in their essay. But the main tool that capture their essays that we will evaluate later on, it will be on the at the top, at the down. Sorry, in the down tab.
Right. Because I'm just trying to understand what is the scope for different strategies in this task. You can imagine some people are doing lots of reading and then they only start writing at the end. Other people are writing as they go through. Some people are doing some reading and then when they get to the end, say, of section 1, then they write about it and then they start on section 2. These would be examples of what you would call different self-regulation strategies.
Yep, true. This is how we try to capture their trace data later on, just to capture these events, as you mentioned, Simon. Some students, as you said, may start with reading or do a lot of reading in the beginning and then jump to the writing later on. So based on these trace data, we can capture their behaviors and to give some characteristics to these clusters based on their temporal behaviors. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So when we look at the clusters here, these clusters, are these defined statistically or visually? How did you define clusters?
Okay. Actually, based on the dynamic time warping, first thing, we take each window separately. For example, the first 10 minutes. And we look at the SRL processes. We use 7 processes, and for each student. For example, if one student spent, for example, 2 minutes within the first 10 minutes, spent 2 minutes on the, for example, on the reading, and the second one spent 1.5 minutes, and the third one spent, for example, 0 minutes. He didn't spend any time for the reading. So the 2 students, for example, who spent 2 and 1.5, they will be assigned to one cluster because they have similar, timing. They spend similar timing on the same processes. However, the students who spent nothing, it will be assigned to different cluster. And later on, when we capture this behavior, I'm talking about only now one time window, which is the first 10 minutes. We apply the same for all the remaining or for the all 12 time windows. So first, we look at the duration for each process, for the 7 processes for each student. And the dynamic time warping is try to find the optimal path between these students. And later on, we apply the k-means based on this DTW matrix just to cluster students, because the DTW itself, it's not a clustering technique. It's just to give us the timing, the patterns for the students. And later on, we apply the k-means to cluster students. And the k-means start to assign similar behaviors in one cluster, or similar students, they have behave in similar way in one cluster. This is how we cluster
And these clusters may not have all been the same size, of course. So some of these clusters might represent large numbers of students. Some of these clusters might be small numbers of students.
Yeah, true. Yeah,
I guess that detail is in the paper, but yeah, we can't tell from the graph how heavy these lines are. I suppose you could potentially at least put the numbers of students next to the cluster legend, or you could even use the line thickness to indicate how dominant the strategy was.
Yep, thank you so much. Yep, actually it will be more useful if we like apply some legend or add some labels just to facilitate.
Cool.
To make
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Other questions? Mohsen, you asked a question.
Yeah.
Did these show any patterns of certain behaviors happening? Can you clarify, Mohsen? Because it's all about their behaviors, isn't it? I mean, that's the definition. These clusters are based on behavioral data. So what do you mean by certain behaviors?
Yeah, so sorry, I'm trying to, this is quite loud here, so I'll be quick. Ben asked a question about the behaviors and whether they could identify these behaviors. I was just interested to see, did you get any specific patterns where certain behaviors happened before others, or what was it like? Did you examine anything like that at all?
Actually, for this study, we just like try to capture the meaningful temporal strategies in this study, in this stage. So we just capture the meaningful temporal strategies based on their behaviors. But for example, as you said, we don't look specifically if students behave in different way before they engage with this particular SRL process. We don't like look in their like barrier like behaviors. This is another study I'm working on it, which is called adaptability. We are looking before and after each window, how students they behave before and after each window to see their adaptation level. But this is a different study. But for this study, we just trying to capture some meaningful like clusters. And after that, we label these clusters. For example, we found, for example, the cluster, the green one, for example, or the orange one, I think, we found them, they start with reading and they shift to writing. So we label them, they are applying transitional cognitive engagement. So, but we don't know exactly if how they behave in some before that, at least with other processes, because our lab couldn't detect all the processes, only the metacognitive and cognitive, and we have some blank values. We just clean it before we have done our analysis.
Great. So I would be quite interested in seeing the results of that particular study as well, because you also mentioned something about a language test that you considered in your data, and you're also referring to speaking and writing, etc. From experience, we kind of have an idea of how it develops in students' minds, but it would be super interesting to me to see whether your data would support that kind of the results that we already have or not. So I'm just super interested. Thank you so much. That was quite nice.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Actually, yes. In this like lab study, we focus more on just for the reading and writing, and also we have the second part of the data set includes some multimedia, including some like behaviors and sensors, cameras and sensors to capture their like also behaviors during this writing and reading task. But for my study, I just use the raw trace data as I show you. But some of my colleagues, PhD students, they are working also for the multimedia like trace data as well. So because it's like full study, And this study is also includes a third hour for revision, because the students start their reading and writing with the first 2 hours. And in the third hour, they use the ChatGPT to help them to refine their essays as a third hour, as revision. So I'm using only here the first 2 hours. Yep. And I have another study for the, yep.
Great. So suppose that you even focused on a particular language skill, like writing and doing revisions. Now, there's several broad ways of teaching writing, and then now you're focused on writing. Revision is what you said. And the process people go through, the steps that they follow using AI nowadays, of course. It would be really interesting to see how those behaviors kind of map out. So thank you so much. It'd be really interesting.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah. Actually, because, as I'm doing like my PhD, I'm like divided my studies. The first study is just to detect the temporal strategies, and the other study is just to investigate the effect of the GNI, the ChatGPT, how affect or improve students' performance, especially with writing tasks. And also, the other one, I'm also include the scaffolding. Students received scaffolding based on ChatGPT as well, just to see how students improve their behaviors after, or their temporals processes after, receiving some like scaffolding based on particular like conditions, or based on particular processes. Yeah.
Great. So just out of curiosity, have you already decided on which kind of steps or processes are you going to be implementing?
Actually, this study, I have used like the Beijing like data set. One of my supervisor is Fan. He conducted this study in Beijing. And also my second study is like about the GNI for the revision hour. I have used it already. And I also collected data from Saudi Arabia from the same, and I implemented the scaffolding as well. I include some tool on the same learning environment. One tool is just like to generate like some scaffolding for students based on the 3 time points in minute number 2 and minute number 21 and minute number 35. So based on orientation and evaluation and elaboration, I'm focusing on these 3 processes. Also, this like scaffolding is generated based on the ChatGPT, because we are using API for our like environment just to generate. So this is what was my next step. And also, I'm working with adaptability study. It's just I define the time session, because the time session for the current study is not like 2 hours. It's just only 45 minutes. So I divide the timing into 5 minutes, and then I investigate, or I check the adoption level, how students they behave after receiving the the scaffolding. Because many studies, they are focusing on the compliance, how students like behave immediately or directly after the receiving the scaffolding. But for me, I'm trying to investigate before and after, so to see their like adoption level, how they adapt their behaviors across multiple SRL processes, rather than just to check their behaviors after the scaffolding as a compliance. I'm trying to fill this gap by investigate the adoption level before and after each cycle.
Yeah, great. So about your scaffolding, how's that implemented? Is it like bits and bits throughout the process, or is it a big chunk provided after they complete a round of revision or something?
Actually, the scaffolding that I have conducted, it was based on the students' engagement. For example, if students engage with orientation within the first 2 minutes, the first scaffold will not be shown for these students, because he already engaged with the, he read the instructions and rubric and everything. So it will not be shown. But if students didn't, it will be shown. It will be like a pop-up like window, a little window that include some advice or prompt for the students, advise them just to read the instructions, understand the task probably, and read the rubrics as well, and choose their strategy. For example, they want to maybe apply reading first and writing next or something, because we also set some strategies based on the barrier research. And the second one and third one, the same, based on the processes. If students engage with that process, the scaffold will not be shown. Otherwise, it will be shown because this student is not active or he needs some help. It's not like fixed scaffolding, because some studies they perform fixed scaffolding. It will be shown at particular time, either students engage or not engage. But for my study, no, it was adaptive. For example, if students, as I said, if students engage, it will not be shown. If it's not, it will be shown.
Okay, so it's personalized to some extent. So you only show the scaffolding if you diagnose that they need prompting in some way, right? And you're gonna run a study to evaluate whether the scaffolding makes a difference.
Yep, the scaffolding makes a difference. Yep, in their like behaviors, like they will be more active after scaffolding. For example, if one group or one cluster of students they were not active in the previous cycle, after they receive this scaffolding, are they become more active or not? So to see their adoption level or how scaffolding help them to be more active in the next cycle.
So that assumes that you and hence the system that you develop with scaffolding, you have a strong view about what effective behavior looks like, or when certain kinds of SRL processes should be activated. Am I correct? You have a strong view about when certain SRL processes should be activated, and if you don't see that, you're going to prompt the students.
Yes, it's true, Simon. Our system, actually, I am involved, but it's not like directly, because we have, I have like some collaborators with me, the research fellows on the same lab. They are like develop some coding just to make it, to use the API to also to integrate the ChatGPT, and as you said, to capture the real time interactions, as you said, if students engage or not, based on the real time. So yes, the system is support this like mechanism or this like activities.
Okay.
Yeah, it's support, and hopefully we can like get the benefit for it, and just to.
All right, that sounds interesting. Lisa, did you have anything? You've been letting everybody else talk.
No, because everyone has been asking such really good questions. So yeah, I'm just absorbing. But it's really interesting work, Saleh. And I think this takes, because there's a lot of work done on trying to make sense of these learning traces. So I think what you've done is to find this other way to try and represent. And I mean, for me, I'm just thinking, wow, it's really challenging to represent the 5 clusters across those different processes. And I was trying to think, is there another way to show them in a more combined, because now you have them on the different graphs, right? So you have like reading, and then you have, I guess, a separate elaboration and all that. So I was wondering whether it's possible to show like instead of like having the 5 clusters for 7 graphs, I was wondering whether it's possible to show the different processes for each cluster. Does that make sense?
Yep, it makes sense. Thank you so much. Actually, yes, there is a way to do that, but in that way, we will only look at the, the centroid, the red line that I show. We can look at the centroid across all like processes for each student. But the issue here, it will not give us like a rich information about each process. But if we plot each process separately, as I have done, it can give us like, yes, I agree with you, it could be more difficult just to interrupt or explain, but it gives us a clear picture how students engage across all the 7 processes rather than plot them in one combined like plot. If we, I tried, honestly, I tried to plot them, all of them, as one plot for each like process, but you know, I find it's like more complex. It's not friendly to be explained. So, and we try to like make it separate, each like process separate, and then we can use our brainstorming and our like analyzing just to give the characteristics for each cluster.
Yeah, I understand. It's like it's very challenging to represent that. I think like Ben is saying, the visualizing is very challenging. So really appreciate what you have done to make sense and to help us understand what's happening with that.
Yeah. Actually, it's a bit you know, it needs, and also I'm trying to find another ways also how to like make it easy, and also as Simon said, I can like improve my like legend just to add some thickness for the some lines just to show how predominant one cluster compared to others. Yeah, this could be very smart idea just to add it up in my plots.
Yeah, and obviously, I mean, it's one thing to design, you know, graphs for a report or a paper, but this could, of course, be an interactive display, which allows you to zoom in, zoom out, filter, turn things on, turn things off, decide you want to superimpose planning over monitoring or something, right? So, I mean, if it's interactive, you don't necessarily have to figure out how do I get everything on one graph. You know, but it's, you know, do you think it's likely that, you know, the kinds of graphs you've been showing us, right, are they going to be the kind of thing that an educator is going to want to look at? Or do you think of these as, you know, this is simply for a researcher who is studying learning processes or writing processes? No teacher is going to look at this, but rather, you know, the intervention aspect, you know, because somebody could say, is this actually going to make a difference to the student experience? Well, only if a timely intervention is made. And you have been talking about automated interventions based on, you know, scaffolding, adaptive scaffolding. But is that really the way you're thinking about this? You're not expecting any teacher to look at anything like this.
Yeah, you are right. Actually, it's good to like look at it and just think about it, because you know, I haven't think like how like the teachers or educators like look at these like plots. I was expecting maybe researchers, as you said, look at these like plots and understand these like plottings, but maybe educators, they can use like the clusters itself. They can read about the students' behavior during the writing task. Some of them, they are preferring reading and writing, reading first and writing next, or some of them, they prefer reading and writing at the same time. So the educators may design, or for example, think about any way that could help these students. For example, if they detect, or if they identify some students, they prefer reading and writing at the same time, they may use like less reading materials, because the students will read in selective way rather than intensive way. But it's worth to be discussed, Simon. Yeah, it's very important just also to think about the other side for the course designers and, you know, educators, and how they will get the benefit from these clusters. Or we can maybe think about some plottings specifically for them, how to summarize these things for them. Yeah, actually, I don't know, honestly, until now, but, you know, it's worth to be discussed in the future. Yep.
Yeah, I think researchers need very different dashboards from educators often. Yeah. Right? I mean, how many educators could even tell you what SRL theory is, right? So, I mean, they would have to be highly literate in SRL theory, obviously, to make sense of any analytics that are using the language of SRL theory. But, you know, I think what you've been doing here is really interesting, trying to translate. You know, the fundamental challenge of learning analytics is to translate from low-level traces to higher-level educational constructs. And you know, what you've done here in terms of talking about things like first reading, rereading, etc., is very interesting. And so, yeah, congratulations.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Simon. And again, thank you for having me today and giving me the opportunity to talk to you and, you know, to share my studies with you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Great. Okay. Thank you very much, Saleh. Thanks everyone for joining, and have a good evening. All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Thanks,
Really
Saleh.
interesting.